lecture natin, sinasabi ko doon, di ba yung gay identity, LGBT identity, etc. So it's very important in our journey to be able to break free from that secular identity, but to identify as children of God, son and daughter. Ganun din yung courage. So, because identity defines destiny, diba? So, for this afternoon, we will talk about our identity as courage members. So, parang we will reflect on what the word courage is actually mean, diba? As a virtue. So, we are blessed, diba, to have doctor in parang virtue ethics talaga. So, in fact, the first time we met, we were conversing yung dissertation niya. Her dissertation is actually on courage, diba? So on fortitude, the virtue of courage. So sobrang parang, and yet this is one manifestation of God's providence to us, diba? Diba? Parang, ano ba yung likely na mamimit natin siya, na yung dissertation niya will be about courage, the virtue of courage. So she would like to share with us her expertise on this particular virtue, so in this afternoon session. So again, let's welcome comebacking favorite speaker of ours, Dr. Monica Nalupta.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. And I know you had you had the meditation and the. Okay, I have not done this in a long time actually because I stopped teaching last year, so it's been a while. In the handout, if you can see, because when I spoke last, I guess there are there are new faces. I think not everybody was here last time I spoke. And last time I spoke here, I gave a little talk on the virtues in general, and what are virtues, on the main virtues. These are classical virtues. So so the first part of your handout is just like a recap. So I wanted to just show you that. So the classical virtues, this is Thomas Aquinas, and he says there are 7 main virtues, 3 theological virtues, and 4 cardinal virtues. Our 3 theological virtues are faith, hope, and charity, and these are infused by God. Then we have the cardinal virtues, and they're called cardinal because the whole moral life hinges on these 4. So every other virtue that you can name falls into the category of one of these 4 virtues. So he says that these are the 4 main virtues, and then everything else has parts. So every other virtue is a part of one of these. And the reason he says that is because virtue is the perfection of a power. So we have powers. Our powers are intellect, will, the irascible appetite, and the concupiscible appetite. So intellect and will are fairly straightforward, right? The irascible appetite is our fear of things. So, right, there are things that we have, like our first impulse is, to run away. Okay, so that's the irascible appetite. The irascible appetite is just generally our fear of things. The concupiscible appetite is our desire for things. So there are things that attract us, which is the concupiscible appetite, like the classical objects of desire are food, drink, and sex. Okay, so there are things that attract us. This is the concupiscible appetite. And then there are things that repel us. And things that repel us are the object of the irascible appetite. Okay, so each of the cardinal virtues. Now, these powers can be determined in various ways. So, for example, like the intellect. You could be a very smart person, right, but not necessarily be a good person, right? So you need the virtue of prudence that helps you to choose rightly, okay, to choose good things, okay? So the virtues help you moderate these powers. They help you control these powers so that you can use them well, so that you can use them for good. So we need the good habits, which are virtues, and these good habits, they dispose us to act in good ways, right? So if you are a just person, then you act justly. So you act justly towards, if you own a company, then you act justly towards the employees, you act justly towards the people around you, you don't cheat them, you don't steal from them, you don't, if you're a just person, that this habit of justice makes you act just, okay? Okay, so this is the recap. Now let's talk about fortitude in particular. So today we're talking about fortitude in particular, and that's what I wrote my dissertation on. And the reason, I'm going to explain as well, the reason I talk, so fortitude and courage, they're the same virtue. Okay, both fortitude and courage are about moderation of fear. So it's moderating your fear of death, okay, which is your fear of the most fearful thing, which is death. Um, Now, the reason I use fortitude over the word courage is because, so the two most, I guess, influential writers on virtue ethics are Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas. For Aristotle, courage was Andrea. The Greek word is Andrea. And Thomas Aquinas, he used the word fortitudo, which is the Latin for courage. So they're the same virtue. But I think that Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas was influenced by Aristotle, but he took Aristotle's virtue and he took it in a slightly different direction. Okay, now so when we talk about courage, we can see that courage is something that we can easily recognize in many different cultures and across cultures, across languages. Everyone understands courage. Okay, and that's sort of we call that the thin definition of courage. The basic definition of courage is that it's about moderating fear of death. Now, we thicken the definition by adding context. Okay. Now, what was Aristotle concerned about with Andrea? Aristotle was concerned with the good. His primary overall concern was the good of the polis, the good of the city, right? So for Aristotle, he was very concerned with the good of the polis, the good of the city. So he really wanted to make sure that the courage was for the soldier to stand firm in battle and to not run away. Okay, so for Aristotle, it was very important that courage was about a soldier standing firm in battle and not running away. Okay, so for Aristotle, courage is really only for the greatest fear, which is fear of death. Okay, so what gets left out of Aristotle's definition is, well, there are lots of people who cannot be courageous, according to Aristotle. Okay, who cannot have Andrea. Women cannot have Andrea. Children cannot have Andrea. Sick or infirm people or old people cannot have Andrea. If you're not a soldier standing on the battlefield facing death, then you cannot be courageous in Aristotle's definition of courage.
So Andrea is also andros, also man. Right?
Yes,
correct. So
yes,
Greek,
it means manliness.
Yeah.
So Andrea means manliness in Greek. Now for Thomas was not as concerned. So he was concerned with people being able to moderate their fear of death. But not in the context of Aristotle, not in the context of the polis, and not in the context of the battlefield and the soldier all the time. So he does acknowledge that yes, the soldier is courageous, but he also wanted a way to say that people who stood up to death, to their fear of death, for the good of faith and justice, were also courageous. So people not necessarily engaged in active warfare can be courageous. And because for him, the paradigm for fortitudo was the martyr, was Jesus Christ. So someone who is not actively a soldier fighting with a weapon can be courageous as well. Somebody who is willing to die for their faith. Thomas Merton, Jesus Christ, and all the martyrs, that he wanted to say these people were courageous as well. So people who were, and so so Thomas Aquinas, he tries to bring in, he actually sort of democratizes courage, right? Because before it was only for the soldier on the battlefield. And Thomas Aquinas comes in and says, no, anyone can possess courage, anyone who can show it, who can, stand firm, who can hold to faith and justice, with the threat of death, that they can also be courageous. Now, he says that fortitude has two integral parts, agredi and sustenere. Now, agredi is aggressiveness. It's standing up. So agredi looks a lot like Aristotle's Andrea. Okay, it's aggressiveness, it's standing up, it's being able to attack, having the initiative, having courage, aggressiveness, initiative. Sustenere, he says, is the enduring part of courage. So it's the ability to sustain, to hold fast, to hold firm, if you're under attack. Now, sustenere, so here is where he actually makes a really crucial break from Aristotle, because he names sustenere the primary part, or the more important part of courage is sustenere. Because he says, and this is really interesting, but he says Virtue is about excellent. So what is more difficult is more excellent, and therefore more virtuous. And for him, sustenere is more difficult, and therefore it's more excellent, and therefore sustenere is more virtuous. Because he says it's more difficult to endure attack than to attack. Why do you think that is?
You're not in control.
You're not in control, but what else?
There's a longer duration of time that we need to...
There's a longer duration of time, and this also brings us to our potential parts. But what else? Why?
There's suffering and pain. And the endurance.
Prolonged.
The endurance of it.
Yes, there's also suffering and pain. But also, put yourself in a situation of war, and you're waiting to be attacked. Why would you do that?
To anticipate and maybe the time.
No, because you're the weaker force, right? If you had a battle, if you had like an army, and you were coming up against another army, and you were the stronger army, then you would attack, right? There's no question. You just go and attack. But if you're the weaker army, then you don't attack, right? You try to find a way to, like maneuver, build a fort, try to like delay. But it's more difficult to be the weaker army, right? It's much more difficult. And therefore, to be the weaker army, but to still stand strong, to still stand firm, to not run away. He says that's much more difficult than going out and attacking as the stronger army or as the stronger person. And so that's why he says that sustenere is the more difficult part, the more virtuous part of fortitude. And then, like I said, all of the other virtues, right, they come under one of the main cardinal virtues. So he says the patience, he says there are three virtues that come under fortitude, and he says they're patience, perseverance, and magnanimity. Okay, and so my thesis actually was that Filipinos have fortitude in a themystic sense. So now that I've explained the difference, why do you think that is? Why do you think? And I want to ask you, because every time, like when I come across other people and I've talked to them about my dissertation, and I say I'm writing about how Filipinos have fortitude, and they're like, yes, we do. Why? Why do you think we have fortitude as Filipinos?
It's often said that among Filipinos, so example, if you go to the really poor communities, many people are surprised how come these people are still cheerful or still happy. So despite the dire circumstances that they're in. So, and yeah, that's described as parang that cheerfulness amidst that adversity or that dire circumstance is considered parang forbearance. So it's the ability to endure so much suffering, to find things cheerful despite that despite those circumstances.
That's a great example, and actually, that's not a part of fortitude.
Oh, okay.
The cheerfulness. I think that's something Filipinos add to fortitude. So
Okay,
it's something
yeah.
that we have given to fortitude, that we have given to this understanding or this definition of fortitude. That it's one of the ways in which our culture has thickened fortitude. Because it's not, like one of the definitions is not joy, it's not happiness.
I think historically we're the weaker people kasi we have been colonized by other races. Yeah, and even in a modern sense, like yung mga OFWs, when they go to other countries, like they're the lower people because they often do the menial jobs,
Not just that they're the lower people, but also because and I really like the OFW example because I read up a lot on it. And just everything that they have to endure in order to provide some good for their family, right? That they have to endure the separation, that they have to endure, as you say, the worst, sometimes worse conditions, that the way they're treated. and just the difficulty of being separated from their family in order to be able to provide for their family. Yeah, it shows a lot of fortitude, I think. In your example as well, we always hit international papers with your example. And in international papers, they say, oh, Typhoon Yolanda has swept to the Philippines, but this person was like visiting and they were playing basketball on this ruined court, and just amazed at the resilience of the Filipino people, the fortitude, etc. So we're always in the papers whenever a disaster hits us and whenever. Anything else? Any other examples you think of why are we fortitude? Why do we have fortitude in the Themistic sense? Yes?
I don't read a lot about the Philippines as a whole, but my family, for example, they are 6 children in the family, and my parents had to find ways to make us go through and study and help us study. So in a sense, we didn't really were aggressive to the circumstance that they endured, despite the other options that they could have with us.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yes.
I think a factor may be our religious foundation.
Yes.
Because, you know,
I agree.
with being a Catholic country, there's always that holding on to hope that God will give something.
Do you know, one of my main examples in the thesis is there was a book by Ronaldo Ileto. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Passion and Revolution. And in it, he talks about how the living out of the Passion was such a, I guess in the late 19th century, it was such a great, like it was used for everything. So apparently, they didn't just sing the Passion at Easter. They did it all year round. It was like a courting, like at wakes, at weddings, when people were courting, they would sing parts of the Passion, and it just became such a, I guess, sort of inculcated in people the suffering of Jesus Christ, that they wanted to take it on, that they felt that they empathized with it, that there was damai, that there was, and so his thesis is that actually that when the masses revolted against the Spanish in the late 19th century, that they weren't fighting for the same reasons that the Ilustrados were fighting for. They weren't fighting for the same, like they say that, oh, it's because of the people in the ones who went to Spain, who studied in Spain and came back, and they started this revolt. And he said, no, the masses weren't. He posits the masses weren't fighting for that. They were fighting because they were living out the Passion of Christ. It was part of their living out, their playing out of it. And that's why you were saying that. So yes, it is part of Filipino. In fact, like I know that it gets criticized a lot when at Easter, when people still do the whipping and the crucifying, but I feel like it's a really hasty. I've been thinking about it in light of this, and I feel like it's rather hasty because they say that it's it's a symbol of uneducated, etc. And I feel like no, like how can you say that these are not the way that people want to, that they want to suffer with Christ, that they want to walk with Christ. Like I think that we should not be judged so harshly. But
I think even in terms of that, the holidays. So I always found it weird that in the Philippines the holiday is Holy Thursday, whereas in the rest of the countries the holiday is Easter Monday. So
yes. That's right.
So
we don't. Yeah, Easter Monday is not a holiday.
Everybody else celebrates the resurrection of Christ, but we Filipinos we celebrate the Passion.
The Passion, exactly. It's it's a very big part of us. And one of my other major examples for this thesis is Jose Rizal. Who are the heroes in other countries? Who are their national heroes?
George Washington.
Okay, George Washington.
So military leader.
Yes, they're all military leaders, but we chose Jose Rizal. And actually, when I first proposed this, we have to go through a dissertation proposal thing, and people like get to criticize it and stuff. And when I first proposed it, somebody said, but Jose Rizal was the American-sanctioned national hero. Like the national hero should actually be Andres Bonifacio because he was the real military leader who led us to etc. But I did more research because I was criticized. So I did more research into it. And I found this essay by Renato Constantino. And he's the first one who criticized. And he's the first one who said, oh, Rizal is an American chosen hero, and he's not an actual national hero. And we were being brainwashed by the Americans because they wanted us to not have a revolutionary leader. They really wanted someone like Rizal who was not. But I think, ironically, he had a very Western idea of national hero, right? That someone a military leader is a much more Western concept than our Jose Rizal is, actually. And I did more research, and I found that lots of Rizal scholars refuting Renato Constantino, saying that Rizal was sort of a legend already in his own time, even before the Americans came and all of this stuff. Jose Rizal, I found this really interesting story about Jose Rizal. And right when he was exiled to Dagupan, he put up Dapitan. I'm really bad with places and names. But so he was exiled to Dapitan, and he put up at school. One of his tests for getting into the school was, so parents would bring a boy and say, can you accept my child into your school? And he would say, okay, leave the boy here for overnight, and I'll assess him and I'll let you know tomorrow. And he did this test where, he would take the boy for a walk at twilight. At twilight, they go for a walk in the woods. Then he'd point out, oh, look at this big tree here in this clearing. And then they would get back to the school, and it'd be dark already. And then he'd be like, oh, I left my umbrella at that clearing. Can you go get it for me? And he said that if the boy did not go back to get it, was too scared to go back to get it, he would not accept the child. I mean, it's not something he told them why or why not, but apparently that was a sort of a secret test he had, because for Rizal, courage was very important. That you show courage, and it not necessarily be the military kind, but just to go back to the woods to get his umbrella, to face their fears of the dark, of the woods, of the whatever. So I guess these are good. I mean, so I talked about the different contexts, right, of Aristotle and courage, Thomas Aquinas, and now the Philippines. How about you guys? Why are you guys called courage?
Yeah. Sharing meeting.
Very short sa'yo.
Why is this group courage? What is your story? What is your context? What is your...
Yeah, kasi
Explain ko na lang. Well, I don't understand why it was named that way historically, but what I've experienced in these past few years, it's actually a good name for us because
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
And do you think you're Thomistic or Aristotelian courage?
that's a new question.
look at that question.
I think one of the reasons that we're probably called courage, especially in the sharing meeting, it's an exposure of our sinfulness, of our woundedness, and it's something it's exposing our vulnerability. So it's something that isn't so easy to do. So that's something that would take courage, and I think that's one of the few aspects of it. I don't know what that is.
Okay.
I want to share. So before I went to courage, I got familiar with the term when I was in grade school. There was a Captain Courage in a book.
Yes.
It's a book about biology, and there's some mascot called Captain Courage. So I was attracted to the manly build of the character. And then before going to courage, I was really struggling with same-sex attraction and really just how to cope with life with this attitude. So when I got into courage, I saw that it reconciled Catholic doctrine with my experience, and I thought that it traced back to me being familiar with the term courage. So I thought at first it would be about manliness, but going through 2 years with courage, I think it's more of a mystic sense because we endure struggles more than really attack the LGBT ideology. So we try to attack our own a lot of inferior coping. So that's
I think that's a really good connection between Thomistic Fortitude and your group.
I'd like to follow up on what I said. I just realized because I can't talk to the question. I think one of the things that's why it's called courage is, I think just the part that each one of us was about to join courage, there's actually already a fear of living our own lifestyle, or a fear of diving into something we don't know about. So basically, it's a little bit parallel to dying to oneself. So it's somewhat connected to that. And that's the Aristotle one. It's more of a soldier thing to do. But as we grow in courage, it's the concern for other people beyond ourselves. I think that's where it transforms to Thomistic. So I think it's in phases.
Well, the Thomistic Fortitude still has a ready, which is still the part where you have to attack and to be strong and to be brave and take the initiative to join this group, take the initiative to try to, I guess, leave your old lifestyle. And I like how Thomistic Fortitude has sort of opened it up into a much longer term thing, like that you're doing all the time. Because with Aristotelian courage, you're there and you're on the battlefield, and you win or you die, right? And so it's very, very brief. Like your moment of courage tends to be rather brief. Whereas with Thomistic Fortitude, it's something that you're able to live out over the course of your life, and it's something that you never stop trying to do. Are there any questions about anything we've mentioned? Or?
I guess I will make a guess why it was named courage. So I think the history was it was established in 1980. So this is when the HIV/AIDS scare started in the US. So late 70s, people didn't know what was happening. It seems to be affecting only the gay population in both New York City and San Francisco. So I think in that darkness, that was when I guess there were a lot of people were afraid, a lot of people were confused. So it was at that moment when the church gave birth to the courage apostle. Maybe that could be the context. I don't know for sure. But I guess 2 points. For sure, the courage in courage is more Thomistic. So particularly, so about martyrdom. So there's a white martyrdom and a red martyrdom. So the red martyrdom is that you get killed for the faith, but the white martyrdom is actually chastity, which is the first goal of courage. And second, so we're fighting against principalities. So obviously, we're the weaker party in this struggle. So therefore, it's more the emphasis is more against on sustenere rather than against. So we're to this that.
Okay, that's great. Anyone else want to?
So I have a question.
Sure.
And how is magnanimity or being magnanimous being demonstrated in courage or something?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think magnanimity as part of fortitude is a really difficult concept to wrap your head around. But the thing is, I think this is where he's trying to stick with Aristotle. So for Aristotle, the most important virtue was magnanimity. For Aristotle, for him, magnanimity was the pinnacle of all virtue. But it's a rather limited base because you had to be very rich in order to be magnanimous. But to be magnanimous, you have to, I guess what Aristotle wanted was that you not just spend all of your money on yourself, that you spend it on, waterways, on coliseums, that you financed and built great things. And that takes initiative, right?
For the
That
welfare of the society.
for the welfare of society. And so Thomas kept it and put it under fortitude because it's something that's difficult to do. It's to accomplish big difficult things. But it's still something that I think that it's a little bit more difficult. I think that Thomas actually does it better. If you give me a minute, I'm going to pull up. Give me a second, and because I just remembered writing a lot about courage and
With Thomas, maybe the context of magnanimity in Thomas is selflessness.
Yes. Yes, it is.
So it's that deeper
Yes.
layer of magnanimity.
Yes. it's to be able to give more of yourself, and that's difficult because it's something we want to cling to. So we fear the loss of self, we fear, and his because I wrote about it because it intrigued me, the magnanimity and
Why is it part of fortitude?
and no, its opposing virtue is pusillanimity. So pusillanimity it's a selfishness, it's a small-mindedness, it's a meanness of spirit, right? That's pusillanimity, and magnanimity is its opposite. It's the virtue, which means that it's to be able to give of yourself, I guess.
Unless the wheat falls and dies. So, I mean, it's in that context.
Yes, and it's also the parable of the man with the talents, the one who how many?
5.
10 and 5, and then the one who buried it.
There's one.
Yes, so he was
one
pusillanimous because he had the one and he didn't use it for anything. He just kept it for himself.
Because he was afraid.
He was afraid, exactly, because he was afraid.
Bilang bago.
Yes.
Yeah, I think for me, like, courage is coming face to face with yourself. And that's the most difficult to achieve, to be able to, like, have your interior warfare between the two. Well, I suppose, I don't know, we have two sides of ourselves, so it's actually one facing against the other. So it's a concept battle. So we need the courage to actually the good side against the bad side. So the interior thing for me is a constant battle. It's not from the outside, it's from the inside. So I think we need courage to actually face the enemy, which is inside of us.
Yes. No, that's a very good explanation of it. There was I'm trying to think of it, but Maslow says something about. Can I look for it? Give me a minute, and I will find this because I have it. Being has both sets of forces within. One set clings to safety and defensiveness out of fear, tending to regress backwards, hanging on to the past, afraid to take chances, afraid to jeopardize what he already has, afraid of independence, freedom, and separateness. And the other set of forces impels him forward towards wholeness of self, uniqueness of self, towards full functioning of all his capacities, towards confidence in the face of the external world. So what you say?
Dapat ganyan according to Maslow. Si Rupa Gutierrez.
He says the difference between the diminished individual wistfully yearning towards full humanness, but never quite daring to make it, versus the unleashed individual growing well towards his or her destiny is simply the difference between fear and courage. I'm trying to look because I had another. I can't find it now, but I had another thing which was like a little parable or saying about the wolf, the three men, the man and the two wolves, and one was fear and one was courage. And I think he was asked which one grows or which one prospers, and it was the one you feed, right? The one you feed, fear or the courage. Yes, you know the story I'm talking about. I can't find it.
It's like a story that you have two wolves in you. One is fear and one is courage, and whichever you will feed will be the one who will grow. So if you will be feeding your fear, you will be more fearful all the time. And then if you will starve your fear and you will feed your courage, then it will become stronger. You can just feed one.
Yeah, you
each
can
one of
only
them.
feed one.
Question kung bakit courage mo na question mo.
Ano?
Kung bakit courage mo
Baka, I guess, yung dahil sa HIV.
I have a question.
Sure.
Since fortitude / courage is associated always with either the moderation or the facing of fear, does that come to say that fear will never go away or will never get to the point of fearlessness? Or there will always be a fear with us forever?
I think we'll always be afraid.
It will always be. You can never get past fear.
I think that we can moderate it, but actually, if you are not fearful, if you do not feel fear, that is, so we tend to think, right, of cowardice as being the opposite of courage. But actually, because courage is a virtue, it's the mean, right? So it's in the middle. On one side, you have cowardice, and on the other side, you have rashness. And so if you feel no fear, then you're rash, and you are not courageous. Yes?
Please help me through. Can you define fear in context of the clinical sense of it? Fear?
I don't know if I can give you a clinical definition of fear, but fear is, it's an emotion, and it tends to be a neutral emotion. So it's something, so Thomas Aquinas, what I like about virtue ethics too, is that it says that emotions tend to be neutral. So fear is a neutral emotion, and anger is a neutral emotion. And it's how you respond to it that makes it good or bad. So anger, people tend to think of anger as something bad, right? But actually anger is not bad on it by itself. It's bad if it makes you do something bad, right? So anger is bad if you get angry and you hit somebody. But if you get angry because you see an injustice being committed, then that is good anger, actually. And so fear as well. Like, you should be fearful because there are things that are fearful. Like, you do fear for your life. Like a very babaw example. I have this cousin who I feel is not fearful enough when we're crossing roads together. So she has been living in Europe a lot. And so when she crosses the road, she expects cars to stop for her. And I'm just like, no, I don't want to die today. Stop, So you have to be afraid because you don't want to die because you were run over by a car, right? So fear is something good. Like if you are walking down a dark alley and there's like a group of really big people, like, we're gonna, like, you can be afraid, right? Like it's not, like it's good for your self-preservation. Like if you are standing on a cliff and you come really close to the edge and you look down and you're afraid and you move back, that's good because then you won't fall off. Fear is something good. It can be good, but it can also be bad if fear makes you not do things. If fear makes you not self-actualize. If you are applying for a job but you're too afraid and so you don't want to, or if you're an athlete and you're competing but you're too afraid and so it makes you play badly, then, it makes you less than what you are. You have to not let you make it less than what you are. But fear is good.
Do you think sometimes God brings us to places of fear so that we can act in courage?
Yes, I do. Do you think? Does anyone want to say more about that?
Sorry.
Or does God sometimes bring you to places of fear so that you can act in courage?
He did that to his son. I mean, that's always the example. To Jesus Christ. The scandal of the cross, etc. God took him there for the redemption of man. So many saints.
I have a question. Since courage is like you facing your fear, it's like what's the place of your will in terms of you being courageous?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. Okay, so your will, the virtue that modifies your will is justice. Okay, so your will is to do what is right. Now, justice is the most, so for Thomas Aquinas, justice is the most important cardinal virtue. That you become, justice is how you become a good person, is by being a just person. Prudence helps you to determine what is good, so it helps you decide this is good and this is bad, and therefore do what's good. And your will is what does what is good, so it holds justice. Now the other two virtues, fortitude and temperance, they're there to make sure you stay just. So you cannot be good. So for example, to be a very simplistic example, you're a judge and you have to render judgment on a case. But some people threaten you and say you have to say that this person is innocent. Now, if you were not courageous, if you did not have courage or fortitude, then you would give in to that fear, and so therefore, and then you would act not justly. So in order to act justly, you have to have courage. You have to have fortitude in order to do what is right. At the same time, you have to be temperate, like you have to be moderate in your desires. Because we say that we can't say that people who exceed in their desires, like people who, drink a lot, or, or I guess have sex a lot with lots of different people. We can't say that these are just people, because they are not doing what is good. They are not doing what is right.
I have a question. Because society defines courage differently. Like say for example, I have a friend and he's living LGBT life, and my other friend says he's courageous because he's doing it. When on this side of the spectrum, living chastely is courageous.
Yes.
So, of course, since it's Thomistic, ours is the correct virtue of courageous.
Yes. So this is what I was saying, right? That courage, the basic definition is about moderation of fear, but that it looks different in different places, and in different contexts, and in different societies even. So we can say that in the Greek time, the model for courage was the soldier, or the Greek hero, like Aristotle, like Achilles, and So for him, this is the model of courage, of manliness. For Thomas Aquinas, his model was the martyr. And different societies have different. The model of courage in Gotham City is Batman, for example. Okay, I asked my students where they first, because you didn't first hear about courage here. You didn't first hear about courage from Thomas Aquinas, right? You guys knew what courage was before you came here. And where did you learn what courage was?
Media.
Sorry?
In media, cartoons.
In media, cartoon. What cartoon? Yes, Courage the Cowardly Dog. Always comes up. Simba, The Lion King. What's the other? I think there were a few that were popular. Mulan. I mean, people learn courage in different places, and so you can see that courage looks different in different societies and different cultures. For Mulan, it was being a girl and being a soldier, right, and fighting because she wanted to save her father, right? For us, in the Thomistic sense, courage is being part of this group. It's living chastely, which is very difficult to do. I understand that in Philippine society right now, LGBT movement, for them, courage is being yourself, right? That's the logo is be yourself and be courageous as yourself. I think it's a Dove ad as well, right? To be yourself.
Do you have any more questions?
So definitely these virtues we need to grow into. It's like a habit.
Yes.
So what are those, I think, concrete steps for us to take to be able to attain that courageous virtue?
Okay, good. So, I mean, I talked about this a little bit last time. I mean, how you get. So basically, there's like 3 parts to virtue ethics. The first is you have to figure out where you are. The question is, who am I? The second is, where do I want to get to? So when you're assessing yourself for who am I, you're trying to figure out, well, how virtuous am I? How courageous am I right now? And then you think, well, I want to be. And the answer to the second is always, you want to be more virtuous. So it's a process. You never get there. You can always be more courageous. You can always be more just. You can always be more temperate. You know, so it's always like it's a moving thing. Like it's never, you never get to the finish line basically. But you always move closer to it. So that's what we aim for. And then the third is, what steps do I need to take me from where I am to where I want to be, right? Which is to be more courageous. And you have to figure out, that's what prudence helps you to do. It helps you to figure out, well, what steps do I need in order to become more courageous? What things do I need to do? What things do I need to make myself do? For example, if you know, well, another very shallow example is if you know you're afraid of heights, then go up to the 3rd floor and look down. Go up to the 4th floor and look down. Like to just try to push yourself to that edge without going over it, you know, to keep trying to get closer. Like if you were trying to be healthy, for example, you would say, well, I need to, prudence helps you decide, and it helps you say, well, I need to eat less chocolate chip cookies and go to the gym more often, and therefore I need to, you know, make a schedule for myself, and it helps you with all the practical steps in order to get to the end you're trying to get to.
I'm actually thinking like each and every one of us in this room would actually express what they're afraid of. We could probably discuss better what we're thinking about here. Probably each one convey what their fears are in some sense.
Okay, yeah, we can, if anybody wants to talk about what they're afraid of. Do you want to start?
Yes. Well, from my age 6 years old, and my fear is actually being alone. And I mean, it doesn't really happen that I am alone, but I live alone. So I'm thinking about alone and being sick. That's my fear. So to back with that, maybe is probably encourage me to face up to it. Is probably just go with the flow of life, like the ebb and flow of life, like things will just be the way they are. And I suppose I would like to invite on each member since they're young and eventually going to get old. And it's always going to be there, the fear of being, I mean, even if I have a family of my own, like they don't really connect with me because being gay is not really
that's really a very basic fear of everyone, right? Like everyone feels that fear being alone.
Mag-ako condition ako. Nasa heaven na fear of. So probably, I was caught off guard, thank you. Look, what I'm thinking right away was probably my fear / worry is not being able to do something that I could have done now and then regret it later. This is on a spiritual aspect. Like when I go in, like when my soul goes out of my body, my biggest fear is saying to myself, why didn't I do enough much of this when I could have done so already? That's why I try to serve. That's how I moderate my fear. I try to give myself service. That's
Great.
Moments of courage na.
No, we don't. Everyone, not everyone has to go. If anyone has something.
Ano fear? Wala naman. Fear of
Hero. Salita lang English. Hindi talaga ako sanay mo.
I have a question. Have you encountered readings that how sadness is related to fear?
Yes. Yes. Actually,
Ano yun, Mark?
How sadness is related to fear?
Actually, it is very related to fear, and I think that that's what the virtue of patience is for. You can put it out. Or perseverance.
Kasi what I've noticed in my OJT, though it's not being expressed fully by the patient when I do intake interviews, I can sense there is fear in them, or in my impression, those who encounter depression, they encounter fear in their lives.
Yes. So actually, the reason that he added, that the potential parts are patience and perseverance too. Perseverance is defined as, the other is that by the prolonged suffering of the hardships of man, be not wearied so as to lose courage. According to Hebrews, that you be not weary, fainting in your minds. On this respect, he mentions perseverance, which is basically what he says perseverance is for, is that you are able to persevere and not lose hope. Because things are difficult. I mean, why would you need perseverance if things were easy? So fortitude is actually about attaining the difficult good. So it's oriented towards the difficult good. So good, there are some goods that are easy, right? But there are goods that are difficult, and that they are hard to attain. And fortitude is about the ability to persevere, to be patient, to not lose hope, to not become sad, while you are struggling to attain the difficult good. So especially, I guess, you, in the case of your group, that you guys, that you are together on this journey to attain the difficult good. It's not a good that's easy for you. It's something that you have to struggle with your whole lives, and that what perseverance and patience are about. They're about not losing hope in life.
Yeah. So maybe to that point, maybe by the sadness is brought about by crippling fear. So it's so you know the good, you try to align your will to that, but you're not able to. So because that's what fortitude and temperance does. No? So it's a balance to energize the will towards the good. So I think the sadness is brought about by that crippling fear. I mean, the fear is just too much that you feel you're not able to.
Yeah, or you lose
conquer.
hope. It's
Yeah.
not that the fear is overwhelming as much as I feel that you lose hope, and then you
Correct.
become sad, and then you give up, I suppose.
isn't there a saying that saying from a wise man that a brave man will flee rather than fight?
Yes.
In terms of temptations.
Yes, if it is something that they cannot overcome. So that's why we talk about courage being in between cowardice and rashness. So if you are up against in a battle that you cannot win, you feel that you will lose or that you will give in to it, then you should flee. Brave man flees to fight another day, right? It's like it goes something like that. So this is true. So it's rash to always attack, basically.
So fleeing is not.
So according to Thomas, fleeing would not necessarily be cowardly.
Okay.
For Aristotle, it would be cowardly, but for Thomas Aquinas, you should not. That if it's wiser, if it's more prudent,
It's more prudent.
it
to
could be more
back-
prudent to back away.
To back away for now. and
For
then
now, yes.
Fight another day.
Sorry, what was the two dimensions? It's either you're too rash or what's the other one?
Cowardly.
Cowardly. So courage is in between rashness.
Rashness.
Because it's a virtue is in the mean.
Virtue is always in the mean. There's always an excess and a deficiency. The excess is rashness. The deficiency is cowardice.
Ooh, I have a question. You know when, since we're talking about courage, and you come to a point where you really cannot do anything about it, you either cannot fight or maybe fly. You know, the moments when you surrender to God, is that considered uncourageous? Because, you know, I cannot do this anymore.
So, right, we talked about infused virtue and the cardinal virtues. So the infused virtues are, the theological virtues are infused by God, he said. Thomas has another category of the infused cardinal virtues. So for Thomas actually, because this cardinal virtues, it's his attempt at saying anyone can have the virtues, even people who are not believers, even non-believers can have these cardinal virtues. However, he truly believed that the full form of fortitude was also that you get help from God as well. So there's an element of, like, you can't do it by yourself. And then when you're at that point, he says that's infused fortitude.
Fortitude, that is the gift of the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
100%.